All right, so thanks for joining us, everybody. My name is Marissa Adams, and I'm the Marketing and Event Specialist here at Trace Security. And I have here with me Bethany Ward, who is one of our Information Security Analysts, and she's going to be talking to you guys about web application testing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Right. As Marissa said, my name is Bethany Ward. I am one of the Information Security Analysts here at Trace Security. I've been with Trace for about 4 years. And today we're going to be talking about web application testing, which is a newer, not exactly a newer form of testing, but typically an add-on past your normal vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. If you all have any questions during the webinar, feel free to put them in the chat. I will answer them as I can. A little bit about Trace Security, if you don't already know us. We are a cybersecurity firm based out of Baton Rouge, celebrating 15 years this year. We do a variety of services from IT audits to social engineering to penetration testing to vulnerability scanning. And web application testing is just one of our offerings. What we're going to cover today, we're going to go over the very basics. What is a web application test? You might hear me say WAT. Who should get a WAT? And when should you get the WAT? I'll go over the testing methodology, common findings, why Trace's methodology is different from other companies. And then we'll have a question and answer session where you can ask any questions you might have as things come up. So what is a web application test? It's a combination of automated manual testing techniques that mimic the actions of a hacker in order to identify potential security flaws. It's focused on application layer vulnerabilities. Now, application layer vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities that are going to happen when the user is, say, using your website, whether it's a client that is using online banking, or if it is an employee that is using your intranet, to go look up the directory or to check their payroll. They can be internal or external, anywhere where a user is going to be interacting with an application. These vulnerabilities include threats such as cross-site scripting, input validation issues, SQL injection, and authentication hacks. A little bit later, I will go into what those vulnerabilities are and why they are important. So who needs a web application test? You definitely are going to need one if your organization manages its own website or creates custom online applications. Custom online applications might be, say you have your own loan processing software that's built in-house, or you do all your mobile banking yourself. Or say if you're not in banking, you have say you're in healthcare, you have a login portal where customers can talk with their doctor, things like that. It also includes, like I said earlier, internal applications such as the intranet. A lot of companies, they host out their main websites and anything external, but they have an internal intranet that has the directory, has where PTO can be requested, has various information needed to provide services, stuff like that. Those are important as well. And you might, even if you don't manage or develop your own website, you still might need a web application test. If your web application host doesn't test themselves, you will definitely want to work with them and have web application testing done. In some cases, I actually just ran into this while I was doing an audit. They had this was with a bank that had mobile and online banking had mobile and online banking hosted by another company. However, if you looked in the due diligence for that company, it listed that one of the responsibilities of the bank was to do testing themselves to make sure that the security on their end was in place and was enough. So you will want to check any due diligence or any SOC reports from your vendor and see, do they perform web application testing? When was the last time they performed it? What were the results? They might not tell you, every vulnerability, but a brief overview. And you also want to check and make sure that they are not expecting that you will be doing penetration testing. In some cases, that is the case, like with this client that I just visited. And that is a legal contract between the two of you. So if it says that you were supposed to do penetration testing of your own and the website gets hacked, then the vendor can say, well, it's on you because you didn't fulfill your responsibilities on our end. So say you have decided that, yes, you do need a web application test. When should you get one? There are several major times in the development cycle where you definitely want to get a penetration test. You definitely want to get one before you launch a brand new application, especially if it's been developed in-house. You want another set of eyes on it, going through, trying to find any security flaws, misconfigurations, someone who can see the forest for the trees. A lot of times developers get weeds deep in the creation of the code and can miss simple things. And I'm not saying that against developers. I was actually went to college and trained to be a developer. So I know very, very well, sometimes you write a piece of code and somebody else looks at it and points out something very obvious that you just didn't think of. You'll want to do it after major changes, whether or not this is you change what database on the back end is being used. You add a brand new app, new functionality, anything like that. You definitely want to have a test after a major change or patch and ensure that no security flaws are being introduced into the application. If you change vendors, even say basically you have all of your website files and you have copy and paste them over to a different vendor. Every vendor and every web host is going to have a slightly different way of implementing the same site. And you want to check to make sure that there is nothing broken in the transfer process, that they don't have slightly different policies that introduce security flaws, anything of that nature. In all other cases, you're going to want to test web applications annually. Similar to doing an internal pen test, this will just become a part of a comprehensive security program and is part of your due diligence and making sure your customers are safe. So how does Trace do a pen test or a web application test? these are the major areas that we focus on. And a lot of it, depending on whether or not you're very technical, you may completely understand this slide, or if you're not very technical, you may not. Either way, that is totally fine. I'm just going to give you some examples going through. Authentication and access control. This is making sure that, you know, a user that signs into your online banking doesn't have administrative access or can't somehow get around and see the contents of another user's profile. Use of cryptography. This is making sure that anything in transfers, say actual transfers, bank transfers, changing information, all of that information is encrypted en route and protected. Session handling, making sure someone can't just steal a session cookie and log in as somebody else. Security and network communications, similar to cryptography, making sure that all of the data, both static data and data in transfer, is well protected. Server configuration and related controls. Application data storage, making sure that one thing that comes up a lot is whenever a server gets a strange input from the user, it spits out an error. Sometimes that error code can spit out a whole bunch of data about how the application works, you know, what variables are being used, sometimes even what those variables are. Injection vulnerabilities. These are also big ways to get information from databases. Say, spill all the social security numbers that are in a database table. Input handling, very similar to the error handling, making sure that any input is sanitized and that users aren't able to break the application by feeding it something it's not expecting. Like if it was expecting numbers and all of a sudden somebody puts in a word, how does the server handle that? And does the server just break? Does it just kick them out? Or does it, you know, start spilling a bunch of information with the errors? Side channel attacks, information leakage. Actually had a really good example of that I'll get into a little bit later. Network traffic analysis is related to that, and we'll go into that. All right. So after the actual testing is done, we go through and we look for all those things. I'm sitting over here pretending to be a hacker, running all my scans, trying all my manual stuff. Then once I have all that data, it's going to be reviewed. I am going to, if it's something critical, I am going to call you and be like, okay, I know you're not going to get the report for 2 weeks, but we need to fix this now. I have had that happen. I will find out if perhaps there's something that I can't do from where I'm sitting, but I know that it can be done from, say, sitting on your internal network. We may have to set up so I can get on your internal network and show you that exploit. Final analysis and documentation. You will get a full report outlining all the discovered findings and vulnerabilities and how I came to find those. So you're going to get screenshots of the actual hacks, as well as what systems they're on and recommendations for how you need to fix them. At this point, if everything is good with the report and you're fine, nothing needs to happen. But if you need me to sit down with your developers or with you to explain each part of the report, I can do that. So what are some of the common findings that we find on these tests? Okay, we mentioned cross-site scripting before. This is where an attacker can insert code into the application or API, and this allows them to execute arbitrary HTML and JavaScript in the victim's browser. So an example of this would be if I was able to put in code that steals a cookie. Say it steals their session cookie. I email this to one of your customers and have them click on the link. They click on the link and it sends the session cookie to me. Then I can, if your session handling is not up, copy paste that cookie into my own web traffic and go, and the website will think that I am that user. I don't have to know their password. I don't have to know their username. I don't have to know anything. Injection. This is sort of similar, but this is where you're injecting queries into a source of data, as SQL database, LDAP, to extract, change, or destroy information. Normally we talk about extracting, stealing all the customer names and social security numbers. But you have to realize if somebody can do that, most likely they can also either change information, say the infamous student changing their grades or their GPA, or they could destroy information. If they can extract it, they can just run a drop table as well and destroy your database. Web server security misconfigurations. This can be a ton of things. This can be anything from your software wasn't patched. You've got the error handling. You don't have secure settings on the cookies, and so they can be caught in clear text and reveal information. You have permissions wrong. Actually, I'll go into that one misconfiguration. One of the biggest findings I ever had was when I was logged in as a read-only user. It was a website that had, sorry, I'm trying to think of best way to explain it, is that it was a case management software where a disabilities and refugee group was doing case management. So whenever there was a problem, somebody fell, a caseworker would come in and put in, okay, here's who fell, when they fell, why they fell, things like that. Here's when I talk to this refugee, they are having this problem. Very sensitive information. As a read-only user, I was only supposed to be able to put in new case data, and I wasn't supposed to be able to read anything. And if I tried searching and clicking where the data would be, the browser reacted fine. Browser said, you are not authorized, you cannot look at it. But in the background, the API was sending that information anyway. So since I was keeping an eye on my network traffic, I could see that there was just this data dump of everything. Every case was sent to me as a read-only user. Luckily, this was on a test website before they launched the application, so they were able to fix that before it went live, and they had any actual information, which I was very happy about. So what does Trace do differently from other companies? One of the big things is we use well-known industry-leading tools. We use Qualys and Burp Suite, as well as a bunch of smaller name tools. We have a server that is entirely set up just for cracking encrypted passwords and credentials. so you're going to get a top rate automated scan, as well as the fact that we're not just going to do an automated scan and hand you the results. We're going to perform manual tests, and we are going to, one, make sure that the automated scans are correct, that anything found by them is actually an issue and can be exploited. But we're also going to perform things and catch vulnerabilities other tests do not. That information leakage with all of the case data, none of the automated scans caught that. If you did not have somebody sitting down in front of a computer for 8 hours trying to break your website, it would have not been found until there was a breach. We also have packages that include retesting after vulnerabilities have been mitigated to make sure that the fix you put in place actually worked. This way, you're not just getting one test, here's what's wrong, okay, bye. We're saying that, okay, here's what's wrong, here's what we recommend. Say you take a month to fix it, and then I go back and I go through those vulnerabilities again and make sure that the fix in place actually worked. Because I have had cases where I've had to call them up. I'm like, okay, these fixes worked, but this one, I can still do it. And it was just, they had a server setting wrong. They thought they'd fixed it. And again, they wouldn't have known until there had been a breach or the next time they got a test. All right. So now's the period of time where I can answer any questions you have. I've been doing this for a while. So does anyone have any questions, anything I went over that is confusing? You can go ahead and type it in the Zoom chat. All right, I am not seeing any questions. Marissa, is there anything else that you think I should go over?
Oh, I think we are good.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. My information. Oh, I just had a question. All right, can you go over the packages you offer for web testing? Definitely can. Let me actually pull up that information on my side so that I make sure I'm giving you the right info. And Rudy, yes, as Marissa said, we'll be sending out the recording to all attendees, and it will also be available on our website. So you will have the presentation, and also you can go back and watch from the very beginning. Bear with me for just a minute as I get the package information for you. I apologize for not having that. I'm an analyst and they don't let me play with sales, probably for good reason. And this information is also on our website underneath web application testing. In general, we have three kinds of web application testing. We have dynamic page testing. This is going to be anything where a user interacts with a page. Say, they go on to online mobile banking, the case management website, anything where there's actual interaction between you and a client. We have static pages, which is pages where there aren't user logins. Say it's just an informational page. And for that, the pricing depends on how many functions the page performs. For the dynamic page, it's going to depend on how big and complex the application is. If it's, you sign up for a newsletter kind of web application, that's going to be really simple and take a lot less time than a full mobile banking is going to do, or online banking. We also do mobile app testing. And so this is going to be any app that is on a mobile device, whether, again, it's your online banking, anything like that. Actually, I said 3, we actually have 4. The other one we do is API testing. This is going to be if you are developing your own apps and you're using an API to control them. I can go through and test specifically just that API. And that, again, depends on how big the API is, how many functions it's got, because it can go anywhere between it's an API with 2 functions to it's got 50, and I've got to test all of them. And for all of those, we can add on retesting, and retesting is going to be cheaper than having a whole nother pen test done. Did that answer your question, Marissa? Or not Marissa, I'm sorry, Hannah. Thank you for asking. Here is our contact information, the website, a phone number to our office, and my personal email. So if you have any questions that say, oh man, I wish I asked that, an hour from now, a week from now, go ahead and shoot me an email. I will answer it the best I can, or get you in contact with whoever would be the best to answer your question. We also have sample reports that we can offer, so you can kind of see what you're going to get. You can either talk to sales, but whether you're talking to sales, if you want to talk directly to me, I do most of the web application tests myself, I can totally get on the call with you and let you know exactly what I'm going to need from you and what I would be able to do for you.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Bethany.
Thank you.
All right, but yeah, like I said, we will be sending out the slides and presentation for the presentation and the video on Monday. So look out for that. And we'll also be sending that to anyone that couldn't attend as well. So hope you all enjoyed it, and look out for my email on Monday.